This screencast is going to demonstrate methods that can be used to compute interbeat intervals and, more importantly, to actually determine exactly which points the software is recognizing as heartbeats and then editing those points so that you can make sure that you get all of your interbeat intervals marked as accurately as possible. We're going to be using FineCycle, which we're going to presume that you have some familiarity with. There are other screencasts on our YouTube channel which describe the use of FineCycle, so you might want to look at those if that tool is completely unfamiliar to you. There are a few different ways that you can engage the tool. One of them is just clicking this button here. Okay, to start off with, we're going to be looking for peaks in our ECG channel. We're going to be using a fixed threshold. What you want to try to do is establish a threshold where all of your R waves cross above, but nothing that's not an R wave crosses above. For more information about the peak detection algorithms used by Acknowledge, you might want to look at this particular application note, which describes various ways that you can set up the rate detector specifically, but the basic ideas behind that rate detector are also used in FineCycle. Okay, what we want to do now is have the cursor just go onto the individual peaks in each cycle. So you see now we just have a line indicating the peaks that it's finding. And what we want to do is place events indicating that we are seeing QRS peaks. Okay. And we want to place them on the ECG channel. Now just one event for each cycle. Okay, so here we go. All right. Now a way that we can quickly determine whether these event marks have been placed accurately for all heartbeats, a way to do this visually, is to rerun FineCycle, now searching for these events and showing us the heart rates that are computed for each pair. So the first thing we want to do is set up our measurements. Now I have a preset already created which contains just BPM, because I want to have literally just BPM and no other measurements. Okay, so now we're going to run FineCycle again. This time we're going to be searching for events. We're going to search on the ECG channel for the QRS peak, QRS peaks that we just inserted. Okay, there we go. Alright, I was trying to move too quickly there. Alright, so this time we want to match pairs of events. That only becomes available when both events are identical. But we actually do want to have this box checked anyway, because we want to have each cycle be identified as from one event to the next, because that's our measurement that we want to get what would be the heart rate from placing the cursor, selecting the area from one event to the next. Okay, starting to ending, that's fine. Now what we want to do to create a visual display is put those into a channel. We want to remember to unselect that because we don't want to place event marks again. Now find all cycles. Okay, so you'll see auto scale that, you quickly can identify places where we've either got extra beats stuck in, or as you'll see places where we've missed beats as well. And what you can do at this point then is just zoom in on places where there is a spike in that channel, and you can see this is the reason for that one. Now we want to quickly remove any extra events like that. Okay, what I'm going to do is watch the channel up here so you can see where there's additional spikes. You quickly see there, and then you glance down here to see what it is that's causing it. Okay, generally it's kind of obvious like that, right? Okay, and you don't actually have to be really careful the first time through, because what you're going to find is you'll iterate this procedure. So any that you miss, you can quickly identify and go back and repeat this as necessary. We start getting to a segment here where a lot of the T waves are up above the threshold. Okay, so what we're going to do is redo a segment. Okay, I've highlighted a particular area so that way when I zoom out I can see exactly where I was. And so you can see actually this long segment here where we've got all these places where T waves were identified. In this particular data file, the subject was resting at one point and then exercising and then resting again afterwards, and so that's why you see this variation in the heart rate, but it also changed the ECG to some extent, which is why this single threshold through the entire file wasn't completely effective. Okay, we're going to do, now the problem here is that our threshold was too low, and so a lot of the T waves were getting picked up there. What we're going to do is, let's highlight an area, encompasses all of that. And then get rid of all of these event marks inside there. Okay, and now we will rerun FineCycle, searching for peaks again. Make sure that we're searching the correct channel. We need a higher threshold. Selection still current peak to current peak. And now this time we want to go back to putting in events. Okay, all that's still just like we said before. Now we're going to find in selected area instead of all. Okay, so now we've just relabeled those parts. Now what we want to do is regenerate this channel, and we do that by calling FineCycle again. First thing we want to do is make sure the cursor is at the beginning. I just type Control-Shift-equals to pull up the selection palette. Okay, so that puts our cursor on the first sample point. Now we can call FineCycle again. This time we're searching for events again. Channel 2, QRS peak, channel 2, okay. Well, that looks good. Let's go back to displaying measurements. Okay. So you see it's still actually not so great, and now we have a whole bunch of places where we've missed them. In fact, we might even want to redo this section. Well, we'll see about that. First thing is first, let's zoom back in here. Alright, So this is the opposite problem from what we had before. Instead of getting extra things labeled, we're missing peaks. And the reason for that is that this R wave didn't cross above the threshold that we had set. Now we can quickly insert events at the proper location by actually using FineCycle again. What we want to do is just highlight that peak. Okay, so we're looking for peaks again. Now this time our threshold is way too high, so we want to go to, let's say, something like 0.2, and you can see the line in there now, so we actually are finding this peak like we want to. Output now, it needs to be the events again, because we want to do that. Alright, now find and selected area, that's the only peak, and there you go. And you can quickly redo this on others, so type Control F, pulls that back up, we can just, there you go. So you can be very efficient at inserting these events. Okay. Alright, so what we're going to do is just mark an area so we can see where we were. Zoom out. Okay, it looks like everything's good until we get to about here. So we'll zoom in here. Okay, and see, there we go, we missed one. Okay. And actually, if we have more than one in a row, that might pick up the T wave. Let's see. Yeah, it did. Okay, so we can just quickly get rid of that in between, right? Again, I'm typing Control F to pull up the dialog box because that's the most efficient way to do this. Didn't quite get low enough. I purposely picked a file that would have a lot of places like this where the single threshold wouldn't necessarily work so well, just to demonstrate these tricks. But also to try to show that even if you have a whole bunch of missed beats or extra beats, that you can get fairly efficient at fixing up the problems. type control Y so I could rescale. Okay. Oh. And we can also get rid of that. Okay. I'll just select the area. Okay, I don't have to go back to this. Get rid of those. Okay. And hopefully we're getting near the end of this. the end of this, I'm actually going to show you a trick that I think is actually going to make all of this unnecessary. But the point of this particular screencast isn't necessarily to show you the best way to do things in this particular case, but rather just to show you tricks that you can use in general. This is a particularly bad set in the sense that this ECG is rather abnormal. Ordinarily the T waves would not be, you would not have so many T waves that are so large compared to the R waves, and the S waves wouldn't be so large. Losing my train of thought there, okay. I'm starting to see the light at the end of the tunnel. Okay. Right, we're past that section. You'll notice again I'm looking at the red trace to quickly find. Oh, darn. Ah, okay. Places where it drops or whatever. I could try to find a threshold that would get a bunch of these in a row, but I suspect that I would just be labeling all the T waves as well. So I'll just do them one at a time. And that, well, I could have told you, let's actually try this. Okay. See if maybe I can get lucky. Okay. You can actually see, so it's showing us that it's, you can see the line there, that it's showing that it's actually hitting the T waves here. Let's try a higher threshold. Looks like it's still getting our T waves. There we go. That worked. And that looks good still? Yes. Okay, so now, oh, yep, that's the end. All right. What we can do, go back to the beginning of the file, Control-Shift equals to pull up selection palette. Okay. Call up FineCycle, we're looking for events now. Okay, match pairs, looks good. Yes, still the same measurements. There, turn this off. And see, it wasn't perfect, but there's only a few now. Next iteration, okay, we missed one there. Oh, wait, no. Let's see. I think my threshold was too high. Oh, no. I forgot to do this. Okay. But my threshold is too high. Okay. Fix our output. Good. There we go. Let's mark that. Okay, so where were we? We were here. almost done. Okay. Looking for events again. Okay. Good, good. All right. And there we go. Just sort of double check. You see a little bit of a spike? No, that appears to be real. Yes, heart rate definitely went up and down. Okay, one last thing, just to show that sometimes you can really think outside the box. I'm going to duplicate this channel. Get rid of all the events in our duplicate. And let's try a different approach. This time, look for negative. Okay, in channel 3. Set our level at minus 0.5. Current peak, output, events. We can actually be a little bit more correct. Okay, and put it on channel 3. Let's try this. Okay, move the cursor back to the beginning. This time we're searching for S waves. Find them on channel 3. Okay, good, good. And there you go. Actually, if we rescale that, you see actually we got identical results much more quickly. And the point of that is actually to show you that even though there are tricks that you can apply to try to clean up something where your first run through isn't perfect, you always want to keep your mind open to other possibilities. You will notice actually if we do a direct comparison of these, so hold down the Alt key to hide these channels and make sure that theirs are on exactly the same scale, and then overlay them. They're actually pretty much identical, but if you zoom in, you'd see that the times at which they're updated are a little bit different. And actually even the interbeat intervals themselves are a little bit different because, of course, the successive S waves aren't necessarily exactly the same as the successive R waves. But if you actually wanted to get from, if you wanted to actually go just based on the R waves, you could use the S waves that we have just found to label the R waves very quickly. Okay, so what we can do, knowing that each S wave is preceded immediately by an R wave, place a cursor at the beginning of the file again. We can run FineCycle. We are looking now for the S waves on channel 3. This time we don't want to match pairs, we want to find each one individually. And we're going to have this go from starting event, say, minus 1/10 of a second, to the starting event itself is actually fine, okay. We are then going to place events at the maximum on channel 3. Our event is QRS peak on channel 3. Okay, so we've got all of those labeled, and then if you really wanted to be gung-ho, we can double check this again. Now, cycle, okay. This time we're looking for the QRS peaks on channel 3. QRS peak on channel 3. This time we do want to match pairs event. Oh, let me make sure I've got the cursor at the beginning. Yes, I do. Okay. We do want to match pairs of events starting actually 0. All right. Display measurements. Turn off the events. And just to try to make sure it redoes this properly, select it. So it's going to say it's finding the BPM on channel 4, although it's actually, of course, based on what the event's in channel 2. So then if you compare the outputs of these,
Mandy's on line 1 for you. Dan, Mandy on 1.
you see they are actually identical.